Hi, it's Isa. Welcome back to the Building You podcast. If you are watching this video, yes, I'm in my car. I haven't actually quite figured out where I will consistently film or record. I am doing this pretty bare bones. Little backstory. This is episode 2. Episode 1, I told myself I would record on that Sunday. And when I went to pull out all my old podcasting recording equipment, I had no idea where anything was. And so I started to stress out and frantically search for my things. And there was a little voice inside of me that said, it's okay, just do it next week. You don't need to do it this week. Give yourself time to get organized. But I know myself, and I know that if I did that, it would be put off for another few months. So I just decided to go for it. So here I am, me and my iPhone. I'm sitting in my car outside of my gym because I have to record this podcast today. And this is the only time I can do it. So we're going to have a good conversation here. The other thing is that my car is like my most productive space. My gym is 40 minutes away from my house, so I don't commute back and forth between clients. And sometimes when I have a bigger break between clients, I sit in my car. It is my office. I call it my spaceship to my coworkers. They're like, oh, are you going to the spaceship? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to the spaceship. Because if I try to get work done in the gym, I will just talk my head off to whoever is around. So I separate myself and put myself into my car, my spaceship, my little work pod. So welcome to Building You, where we're just building. I feel like this is very true to this show and to my purpose. We are building from scratch. I do not have a studio. I do not have recording equipment. I don't have anything. Maybe in a couple episodes I will. Maybe in 100 episodes I will. Who knows? We're gonna figure it out. Today's conversation, we are talking about burnout. I know, super fun. Super fun. I was actually inspired to talk about this today because it's something very, very dear to me because I've struggled with insane burnout in the past. But I had a conversation with my friend and boss the other day about burnout. And I was like, you know what? That's going to be the episode this week. I already had it in my notes. I already had all the things that I've processed and researched on this topic ready to go. And I was like, this is what we're talking about this week, because I think a lot of us have struggled with burnout or will be struggling with burnout at some point. I think there's a statistic out there that by the age of 32, you will have experienced burnout at some degree. So this is something that if it hasn't happened to you yet, it might happen to you. And we want to do our best to navigate it and avoid it or give ourselves the tools to work through it if we're in that situation now. So my experience with burnout was, I didn't really know what it was. I didn't know what it was. And now in hindsight, I'm like, oh girl, you were burnt out. You were burnt out. I won't go too much into my backstory. In episode 1, I walked through like my entire life with you. So we're not going to get too far into that today. But essentially, I was a musician. I am a musician. Okay, there it is. That's what we're getting into. I am a musician. And growing up, I was constantly traveling for shows, constantly traveling for gigs. And it was a huge part of my identity. Was just like, oh, Isa, the singer. Oh, Isa, the musician. Oh, Isa, she's going to go so far one day. She's going to do so good. I was like, my identity was tied to that. And that was why I wanted to move to the city. I wanted to move here so that I could pursue music even further. I was living in a small town, so I was driving here often to work with my band, to work with my record label, to work with my studio, to play gigs. It was a lot, right? An 8-hour drive back and forth. Made it hard. What made it even harder though, and what was my last straw, was COVID. I was actually here for work March 13th when everything went crazy in North America when we did the initial lockdown. I just arrived at the city and I had 2 gigs lined up, and within like 30 minutes of me being in the city, I'd been messaged by both of them that it was canceled, can't do it, right? You all know what happened. We don't need to relive that stage. And, we thought it would only be 2 weeks, and it ended up being years. And I know that all of you were affected by the pandemic in some way or another, whether it was your family, whether it was your health, whether it was your career. It happened to all of us. And this is how it impacted me. I was forced to stay at home in my small town where there's not a lot of opportunities in music. I was having a really hard time making it work. I produced an album during the pandemic that was really, really hard. And just reaching people and continuing to grow as an artist was feeling damn near impossible. TikTok was great, but playing a live stream on social media or on YouTube just wasn't the same energy. And I think that I really felt like I was trying to swim upstream, but like with no fins, and also having my hands chained behind my back. That's what it felt like. I was just really trying to fight against the current and really trying to keep the ball rolling, but it felt like it just wasn't happening. And I think during that time in 2020 and 2021, I burnt out. I did. I was putting so much pressure on myself and linking my value and my worth to the work that I was putting out, because it was so tied to who I felt like I was as a person. And so when it just wasn't working anymore, I really took that to heart. Like, I know that it was environmental and that like my tools were taken away from me, but at the same time, I was putting on myself. Like, if other musicians and other people are still being successful, they're still getting all this work done, they're still playing shows, they're still growing on social media, they're still getting these opportunities. What's wrong with me? Why can't I do it? Why am I not reaching the same people? Why am I feeling so drained? Why am I feeling this way? And I started to put it on myself, and it just spiraled. It became a whole thing. Honestly, I have not written music or played music and felt the same since. And it's been now almost 5 years. And that's scary. And that's sad. I still try to sit down and write things every once in a while, but it doesn't click the same way. And I think that I'm still recovering from that feeling. From the age of 9 to 18, that was who I was. That was my entire thing. And now it just suddenly wasn't working, and I was having to force it. And it was just so exhausting. And I put that all on myself, and I crashed and I burnt. And I still moved to the city with the intent to pursue music. But again, the pandemic was still raging. There was no opportunity. And where there was opportunity, you had to frickin' fight to get it. You had to fight to get it. And at that point, I had no energy. I was just done. I was emotionally exhausted. I was physically exhausted. I was just lacking creativity. I was just done. I was done. And it felt awful to feel so over it, but it felt even more awful to try to force it. So that's why I explored other avenues. And if you listen to my first podcast, you know now I'm a full-time personal trainer and content creator. That's so far from what my initial goal was, right? But it's okay. We're following happiness. But yeah, that's kind of my history with burnout. I think I started to like taste the signs of burnout last fall or last winter too, around November. Started getting cold. Seasonal depression kind of kicked in. I was starting to really hate creating content. Not hate it, but I just didn't want to. I wasn't feeling joy from anything that I was putting out. I was feeling just drained again. And so that time I took a step back. And I still made videos. I still put out content. I still showed up for my clients in the best way that I could, but I just gave myself grace. And I think that I definitely am happy that I sensed those signs when I did, right at the beginning. So I didn't crash and burn the same way that I did last time. And yeah, I had this conversation with my boss the other day. He was asking how I felt about starting this podcast. He's like, how are you feeling? Are you excited? Are you nervous? Are you scared? Are you whatever? And I said, I'm a little bit scared, but not of the publicity, not of people judging me, not of, what people would mostly say when they start putting themselves up there and they start posting videos. I said I was scared to burn out again. And I am so scared to fall into that same cycle that I am like over alert to if I start feeling exhausted, if I start feeling fatigued, if I start feeling this way, that way, I'm like, okay, what's happening here? What do I need to change? What do I need to shift? Where do I need to pivot? Because I don't want to let myself fall into that again. And that's why I was like, we need to talk about this today. We need to talk. So burnout. What is burnout? It can present in a lot of different ways, but to simplify it, it's essentially working yourself into exhaustion. And it doesn't need to be physical labor. It could be mental labor. It could be caretaking. It could be taking on a side project. It could be anything, really. Anything that is taking over your life. whether you want it to or not. I think that burnout is very prevalent in our society right now, especially in this post-COVID era, which I've heard a lot of people talking about, and I'm calling it that now, post-COVID era, because a lot of things have changed, and it does feel like we stepped into an alternate reality sometimes. But I think that it is very, very common, and it's going to happen more often now. I think, especially in Canada with our economy, or anywhere really right now, it's just really hard to make a living and be okay financially. So I think that a lot of people are working a full-time job and they're working a side hustle. I'm very reluctant to call it a side hustle because if you need to have a side hustle, it's no longer a side hustle. It's a second job. If you have a side hustle because you just want to do it and it happens to make money, then okay, that's a side hustle. But if you have to create something or post something or work somewhere because you need to supplement your main source of income, that is no longer a side hustle. That is now another job. So I think a lot of people are having to bring in multiple streams of income now. It's just the way it is. One job, one income is not enough to pay for your living expenses, for your transportation, for your groceries, for your family, if you have one. It is kind of being talked about in a lot of the articles that I've read and a lot of podcasts that I've listened to, that women are statistically more likely to become burnt out or burnt out more often. And I think that that's just because of the role that we tend to play in our family systems, in society. We are more likely to be people pleasers. We are more likely to put our own needs aside and be there for everyone else physically, emotionally, as a mother, as a daughter, as a friend. And that's not a gender issue. That's just the way our society rolls. And it doesn't have to. We're going to get into that. We're going to get into how we can set up some boundaries, no matter your gender. Set some boundaries if you're in that caretaking role and protect yourself, essentially. So I have my notepad in front of me. If I'm not looking at you, that is why. I'm reading all of my notes so I don't leave any of the good information that I have researched out. There's a lot of information on burnout out there, breaking it down into something that's going to be easier for us to digest and to talk about. So essentially, there's 5 main stages of burnout. These 5 stages were categorized by the Winona State University, and other articles have followed suit. Some papers have broken it into like 20 stages. We're not going to go that crazy. I'm categorizing them into that 5 stages so we can just deliver this information straightforward. So stage number 1, the honeymoon stage. Kind of like a honeymoon in a relationship, I guess, the honeymoon stage. Like everything's great, everything's good. There's might be a little red flags popping up here and there, but you're not letting that get to you because there's so much good stuff happening. Maybe you started a new job. Maybe you started your company. Maybe you are in a new relationship. You've started something new, whatever that is. In this stage, you're feeling really driven. You're feeling motivated. You're feeling inspired. You're feeling excited. You're feeling like you have so much energy. You could run to space, do 6 laps around the moon and come back down and then keep going, right? And you don't feel like this feeling is going to end. Like you feel like this is just what it's going to be. I'm in the right place. I started something. This thing is bringing me joy. I'm in the right office now. I have the right colleagues now. I am in the right industry now. Some of this ambition could be driven by fear as well. I think as a younger person, I felt this kind of fear a lot. I feel like I need to prove myself because of my age. I feel like I need to go above and beyond and just set a really unrealistic standard for myself. Maybe there's spurts of time where I can meet that standard, but like for the most part, like I'm going to crash after that. And that's setting me up for burnout. That's setting me up to fail and feel bad about myself because I'm not upholding this completely unrealistic standard that I've set for myself. That's not fair. That's not fair. That ambition could be a positive thing. It could be genuine love for what you're doing. It could be big goals, big belief in yourself, which is all a really positive thing. Make sure that you're doing these things for the right reason. In the honeymoon phase, you're also going to be finding yourself saying yes to more things. You're taking on everything that people are offering you because you want to prove that you can do it, or because you think that you can do it, or you know you can do it, right? It almost becomes an addiction. It becomes really hard to turn that off. You just want to keep saying more. You're filling up your plate. It becomes a snowball effect because as you prove that you can do more, you're going to get handed more, or you're going to take more on yourself. During this time, you might not even realize that you're neglecting your needs, your basic needs. You're neglecting these because you're so focused on this goal that you start cutting corners. You start eating fast, eating things that are convenient. You start skipping your workouts because you don't have time. You're not keeping a consistent sleep schedule, and maybe the sleep that you're getting is really, really poor quality, but you just don't care, right? Because you only have 24 hours in a day, and all of this sleeping, working out, eating properly, spending time with your family and friends, that takes out from the 24 hours. Why do that when you could put all those 24 hours into your goal, into your career, into your achievements? As you're neglecting your needs, you might also be displacing things that are popping up. Like in the beginning, when I said this kind of relates to a honeymoon phase in a relationship, those first 3 to 6 months where it's new, it's fun, it's fantastic, everything is exciting. You're learning more about this person. You're learning more about yourself. During this time, there could be countless red flags popping up, but you're just so excited and there's so much new fun stuff that you kind of just toss it to the side, right? You're just like, I'm sure that'll go away. I'm sure it'll get better. I'm sure that's just a one-time thing. This is what you're doing to yourself, in your career, in your ambition, in this excessive workflow. There's a bunch of things popping up. The fact that you're not sleeping properly, the fact that you're skipping meals because you had to book something in that time slot, the fact that you're not spending any time with your family and your friends. These are red flags. These are red flags that you're giving yourself, and you're ignoring them because you think that, once I make this much money every month, then I can settle down and I can chill out a little bit. Once I get that promotion, then I can chill out, settle down. Once I finish this project, there's always going to be a reason to keep driving forward. And in that time, you're neglecting your needs and you're displacing these problems that are popping up all around you and saying, please address me. Please address me. This is an issue. You can't keep up. And there is no shame in not being able to keep up. I want to say, not being able to keep up, that sounds so scary. It sounds terrifying. But you need to know that this does not define you as a human being. You are not a robot. You are not only meant to work on a production line. You are not only meant to produce content or to produce good work. You are more than that. And if you can't keep up, you have every freaking right to say, okay, I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to sort out what's working for me, what's not working for me. Maybe I can hand this project off to somebody else. Maybe I can ask for help. I can ask for help, right? You might also notice in this honeymoon phase that your values are changing. Maybe before you really loved getting in the gym 2 to 3 times a week. You really valued that time. Now you're displacing that value and you're putting something else above that, right? Sometimes maybe this is positive. Maybe before your values were having a rum and Coke every night. I don't really drink. Is rum and Coke like a normal alcoholic combination? I'm going to say an old fashioned. Maybe your value before was having an old fashioned every night, a little nightcap before you go to sleep. Okay. That's not the best healthy habit, so maybe the revision in values could be a positive thing because maybe you decide that I'm going to replace that drink with journaling or with a nice cup of tea and some stretching before I go to bed. That's an example of a positive revision in values. However, if your revision in values is impacting you negatively and you're replacing the things that you had in your life that you valued that were actually good for your growth, good for your soul, good for you, with something that will be good for your career, you might need to revise that revision. Stage 2, stress onset. Stress. Everyone loves to talk about stress. Stress is real. Stress is a necessary thing for our survival, technically. But the amount of stress that we have nowadays is nuts. I'm going to do a whole other episode on this. We're not going to get too deep into this right now, but we are so stressed out. Our baseline, we are so stressed out. Even if you think you are not stressed, you are stressed. I was stressed driving to work today. And I was just driving. But that was so much stress. Even if I don't really feel like, I was so stressed out, I am on alert mode. Anyways, like I said, we're going to go into this in a separate episode. Stress onset. At this phase, the honeymoon phase is over, right? Those problems that you were displacing before, they're popping up now. And you're really starting to pay attention to them. And it's stressing you out. You might start to feel heightened anxiety. You're also going to start to feel really fatigued too. That is a side effect of stress. You just feel tired, emotionally and physically drained. I find too, when I'm stressed, I actually get confused as to what is stressing me out. During this phase, when stress starts to really start looming down on you, you might start to withdraw yourself from your colleagues, from your friends, from your family, from the things that bring you joy. Like, I stopped writing music. I stopped playing music. That was something that I really enjoyed doing. And I had it in my mind that that was what was stressing me out. So I stopped. When I'm stressed now, the things that actually stress me out, bumper to bumper traffic, constantly being aware of my surroundings, doom scrolling on social media, watching YouTube documentaries or shows that are really disturbing and sad, or watching the news that I have no control over that's really sad. These are the things that are stressing me out. An over full plate of stuff that I need to work on. I'm freezing. I'm trying to think of everything that's stressing me out, and it's stressing me out. These are the things that are actually stressing me out. But as I'm in that stress and I'm in that fight or flight mode, that is that natural instinct when we feel stress, I'm starting to think that the thing that's stressing me out is my partner, or my friends, or working out, or writing, or drawing, or the things that actually bring me joy. And I withdraw from those things, even though those are the very things that I need to help me manage my stress. I'm just confused as to what's actually stressing me out. I can't pinpoint it. I just feel stressed, and I feel like I need to pull away from all of these things that bring me joy so I can focus on these things that are bringing me stress, in hopes that I'll solve it. That doesn't add up. And I'm guilty of this. I probably did this yesterday. I might do this today, but I'm really trying to focus and ground myself and say, hey, this is not the answer. You almost need to pull yourself out of that fight or flight mode, that instinctual fight or flight mode, and look at yourself from a bird's eye view or a third point of view and say, girl or bruh, this is not it. This is not it. If you are feeling stressed, you need to ground yourself, and you need to look around at the things that normally bring you joy, and you need to know that those are the things that will bring you joy. And pushing those things away, pushing those people away, pushing those hobbies away, it's not going to help you, and it's actually just going to further this decline into burnout. It's not fair to you. It's not good. Stage 4, we are now in chronic stress. There's a difference between stress and chronic stress. It's not a huge difference though, and it's a slippery slope. When we're feeling stressed out, it can be momentary. You can be like, oh, I'm stressed. And then, okay, I'm good. I'm back on the bus. I'm good. I'm back on the horse. I'm feeling fine. I'm feeling good. Chronic stress is a nightmare. It is a nightmare. And I think that a lot of us are feeling chronic stress and we don't even realize it because we are so convinced that this is just normal. It's not normal to feel this stress all the time. The way we used to live, we would get chased by a grizzly bear, and then we would be fine. And we would return back to our village, and we would sit down and have a meal. We'd be like, we're good. We're good. And then maybe we'd hear a crack in the bushes at night, and we'd grab our spear and we'd be like, what's that? Nothing? Okay. Put my spear back down. I'm good. Right? Little peaks of stress. That's so normal, and that's necessary for our survival. However, chronic stress, feeling stressed all the time, not normal, not okay. And you need to identify when you are in that state. Maybe others have identified that you're in that state for you, and you're in denial. You're in denial. You say, no, it's fine. I got this. No, it's fine. I always feel like this. No, it's fine. It's just part of the job, right? And you might be in a job where that chronic stress is just the way it is. And you need to decide if that is the way that you want to live your life or not. Or you need to find a way, build a system for yourself to get out of that, because chronic stress can have serious health implications. At this stage, you're consistently tired, emotionally exhausted, physically exhausted, apathetic. Maybe you're starting to feel a little bit pessimistic. You're really trying to find the light at the end of that tunnel. You're really trying to find the joy, but it's not popping out at you. Your family circle, your social circle, your partner, your best friend, your dog is probably picking up on the fact that you are so stressed out of your mind all the time. You're becoming impatient. You're becoming irritable. You're becoming snappy. You're making poor decisions. You are neglecting conversations. You are neglecting time with those people, and they know. They know, and they're worried about you. And maybe when they come forward and they tell you that they're worried about you, you're like, no. And then you snap at them even more. And that's not who you are. That's not who you are. I know that because if that is who you are to a core, if that's the person that you are, you would not be listening to this podcast. But I know that everyone here, if you're finding yourself snapping at your partner, snapping at your parents, snapping at your children, snapping at your best friend, feeling really irritable and annoyed at the things that they're doing, I know that it's because there is another issue at hand. It is not them. It is not you. You're just way in over your head and so stressed out, and you can't regulate it. Not with the system that you have in place right now. You might be impacting other people because you're forgetting stuff too. You're forgetting what day it is. You're forgetting your anniversary. You're forgetting to pick your kid up from daycare. You're forgetting that you had a hair appointment and now you just stood up your hairstylist even though you waited 3 months to get that appointment. You're forgetting things. Your brain's getting a little foggy. You're so focused on how stressed out you are, so focused on your deadlines, and yet you're starting to feel nothing at all. And that's scary. Another major thing that can happen in lieu of chronic stress is depersonalization. It can feel awful because it's one thing to not feel attached to the people in your life. It's a complete other thing to not feel attached to yourself, to not feel attached to who you are, to lose sight of your core values, to lose sight of why you're even doing this. You might be on autopilot. Like, okay, I know that at 8 a.m. I have to go to work just like I do every day. Or I know that I have to pick my kid up at this time, but you're not really thinking through the motions. You're not feeling the things that you're doing, and you're not absorbing the things that you're doing. You're eating, but you're not tasting it. You're driving, but you're like on autopilot. You're listening, but you're just not really there anymore. Now we're in burnout. Fourth and fifth stage of this progression are burnout and habitual burnout. I'm just going to talk about them both at the same time. Burnout and habitual burnout, there's only one minor difference. When you're burnt out, you might still be able to identify it. You might still be able to make a couple quick changes and scoot yourself out of that situation real quick. You might still feel open to having those conversations with friends and family, but you're exhausted, kind of a robot at this point. And that is not what you are. Like I just said, like 20 minutes ago, that is not who you are. You're not a robot. You're not a robot. You are a human being, and you are put on this earth to feel things, to feel joy, to feel pain, to feel sadness, to feel happiness, to feel all of these things. And at this point, you're not feeling anything really. The big difference between burnout and habitual burnout is habitual burnout lasts for a really long period of time, and it often presents as depression or comes alongside depression. I don't want to talk too much about depression. I am not a doctor. I am not a therapist. I am just a girl yapping in her car, in her Corolla. So I don't want to get too far into depression. And I don't want to diagnose you with depression either. I can't. And you can't either. If you are at this stage in burnout, you need to seek medical attention, because it very well could become depression and become a really serious health factor. At this point, you might not be eating properly. You're not sleeping properly. You're feeling pretty void. You're feeling pretty foggy and pretty void of any joy or really just emotions in general. That's one thing to feel sad, and it's another thing to feel nothing, right? And I don't know if you have been in that situation before, but feeling nothing is really concerning. You might be feeling lost. You might be feeling unsure. You might be feeling embarrassed. I know that was a huge part when I was burnt out, was that I felt embarrassed because I felt like I had let people down. Everyone that had invested their time or their money or their effort into my career, I felt embarrassed because I was at this, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it anymore. I desperately needed a break. And my body had been crying to me for probably months, if not years, that I needed to take a break, and I needed to set up these systems for myself. And I needed to set up boundaries for myself to protect myself and my career and all of the goals and ambition that I had. But I didn't do it. And I learned the hard way. So now we've gone over the 5 stages of burnout. We have number 1, the honeymoon phase. We have number 2, stress onset. We have number 3, chronic stress. And then 4 and 5 are burnout and habitual burnout. If you are feeling like you might be on those early stages of burnout and you hadn't identified it yet, let's go over the signs of burnout. These are the signs that you need to look into for yourself, so you can say, maybe I am not functioning the way that I should. Maybe there is a better way for me to navigate my day-to-day so that I can show up best for myself, for my family, for the people around me, for my career. Because this is the time these initial signs, this is the time that it is easiest to rewire yourself and to prevent the onset of chronic stress or burnout, or God forbid, habitual burnout and depression. Signs of burnout: physical exhaustion. A lot of times our brain is still going and we are like, I'm on it. And our body is just like, oh, let me rest. Please stop. Like maybe your muscles are aching. Maybe your joints are hurting. Maybe it just feels like your feet are like 200 pounds and you're just like dragging yourself to walk. And it just feels a lot harder to move. These are all signs of physical exhaustion. Even if your brain is moving 100 miles a minute, your body and your brain work together. And maybe your body is giving you signs that your brain is about to crash as well. And you need to give yourself physical and emotional rest. Because even though your brain wants to keep running that marathon, your body is like, hey, dude, stop for a second. Let me breathe. Emotional exhaustion. So maybe you're feeling the opposite. Maybe you could still run a marathon, or maybe it's not hard for you to move. Maybe you're not feeling any physical soreness, but you're just so emotionally and mentally fatigued that it still kind of impairs you day to day. Low drive. Maybe you're lacking your motivation. You're lacking your creativity. The things that used to motivate you or inspire you no longer are. And you just, like me, I just couldn't bring myself to sit down at a piano, or couldn't bring myself to write anything. I wanted to, but I just couldn't do it. Irritability. You're snapping at the people closest to you. Things are bothering you that normally wouldn't, or they're bothering you more so. Maybe you're road raging. Maybe you're getting in fights with strangers on internet comments. You might be feeling brain fog. Just having a hard time kind of detangling your thoughts, having a hard time processing things, having a hard time thinking about things. Starting to eat poorly. This is one that I want to dive into a little bit deeper, because if you are in those stages of burnout or habitual burnout, chances are you're going to be reaching for foods that are convenient, that are not necessarily good for you. And before I go any further, I also want to say that eating something that is not that great for you is better than not eating at all. If you are in a chronic state of depression or burnout and you are only eating Pop-Tarts because that is all that you can bring yourself to eat, I'm not going to shame you, and I hope that nobody shames you, because eating and fueling your body, even if it is with the worst thing possible, is still better than nothing. And you should still be proud that you got up and you made yourself some Mr. Noodles. And I'm very proud of you. However, if you're feeling that you're getting those spikes of stress and then you're okay again, and then spikes of stress and then okay again, maybe find a good snack or a good food to keep on hand, so that on those days where you're just not taking the time to feed yourself properly, you have a meal or a snack to reach for that isn't necessarily loaded sugars, a cereal, or these bars that are labeled as protein bars, but they're actually just filled with sugar and a bunch of other junk. These things, while they're better than nothing, are not actually going to fuel your body and your brain in an efficient manner to help you. I know that when I was in those states of like chronic burnout, chronic stress, I wasn't eating properly and I wasn't taking the time to move my body or do things for my soul. And due to that, I was putting on excess body fat and my muscles were atrophying. And because of that, I felt so much more insecure. I felt awful about the way that I presented and awful about the way that I moved. I was feeling insecure in my body, and I was feeling sore and tired and achy when I moved. And that's not going to help me get out of depression and burnout. That's not going to help me get out of chronic stress. That's just going to make me more stressed about something else. So make sure that you're keeping stuff on hand, so that if you are sinking into these periodic stages, or God forbid, you are in a state of habitual burnout, you are fueling your body and most of all your brain with the things that it needs to help you get out of this state. Your sleep is another huge thing. If you are constantly feeling fatigued, or you're waking up in the middle of the night, you might need to address your sleep. And so closing out this episode, I just want to say that a lot of these signs and symptoms of burnout could be factors of something else. I struggled with anemia for years. So that fatigue could have very well been my anemia. I'm low on iron, right? Vitamin deficiencies can have a huge part in how we show up mentally and physically. Here's the steps I want you to take. I want you to look at your sleep, eating, and how you show up. If you feel confident that your sleep is good, really good, like 6 to 8 hours for men, 7 to 9 hours for women. If you feel confident that you are eating to the best of your ability and you are getting all the nutrients that you need, and if you feel confident that you're showing up to the best of your ability, you are continuing to value your movement, your hobbies, your crafts, the things that you managed before, but you're starting to feel these stages of burnout, then it might very well be burnout. However, before you start diagnosing yourself, go get your blood work done. I didn't know that I was lacking in iron until I did that. And if my iron was at a perfect level and I was still feeling chronic fatigue, then I would be like, okay, something else is wrong. Now I need to look into myself. Just cover all of your bases. Cover all of your bases. This is so circumstantial and it's going to present differently for everybody and in different situations. I know now that I pay more and more attention to myself. I'm so much better at protecting myself. Because last November, I was starting to feel pretty low. And I had probably a good 4 of these symptoms. I was irritable and I was just feeling a lack of energy and joy in the things that I was doing. And that scared me because I did not want to go through this again. So I pivoted and it was pretty easy for me this time because I caught it early. So if you listened all the way through here and you said, I've been burnt out before, or I am dealing with early stages or mid or late stages of burnout. You have a family member that is experiencing this. I hope that some of this information was helpful to you and some of the signs to look out for. Just know that you're not alone, man. Okay. So if you've already experienced this or you haven't experienced this yet, I hope that you can use some of these tools to prevent that or to make it a little bit easier on yourself because you deserve better. I deserve better. They deserve better. We all deserve better than this. No job is worth us plummeting to this degree. Remember who you are. Share this with a friend if you found it helpful or you think that they would find it helpful. And let's talk about it. Let's talk about burnout because it is so common and you do not need to feel alone if you're going through this. It has been such a pleasure to sit down and talk to you today, even though I had to do it on the road in my little car. I don't know. We'll keep finding new locations every week. Thank you for being with me here today. I'm proud of you. And I'll see you next week on the Building You podcast. Bye.